Alright, we are recording for Chapter 7 of The Voyage Home, which, I am happier with, at least. I mean, it's not necessarily a great chapter, but at least, you know, how the previous chapters seem to be trending downward for quality, that this one is better, so not necessarily correcting the trend, we'll see, but at least, like, flat. It's all just following Kirk and Spock, their adventure getting bus fare on the bus to the Cetacean Institute and then getting kicked out of the Cetacean Institute. So how did they manage to get the change for the bus fare is actually kind of amusing because no one would just change bills, which seems a little odd, but yeah, it happens. So what do? They go in, it's like, fine, we'll just buy something. Didn't want to. Kirk didn't want to spend money on something not essential, but fine. I'll take one of those, and just describes it as a small foil-wrapped disc from a bowl on the counter. I'll have one of these, he said, and handed the clerk a bill. And is then, like, okay, getting some change, but it's like, he thinks he needs more, so it's like, can you change this? No, I would, but it's against policy because my boss doesn't want us running out of quarters when, you know, we end up needing them. So no, it's like, fine, I'll buy 2 of these. He picked up another disc, went through the process all over again, and stalked out of the store. Here, Spock, he said, when they were once more on the street, have a mint. So he potentially just gave, like, 10 or 20, I'm not sure what size of bill, to buy mints, one at a time. Solved the problem. Spock disassembled the package, unwrapped the foil, and sniffed the wafer inside. Kirk ripped open the bag he carried and ate his wafer quickly. Spock put his wafer in his mouth and allowed it to melt as it analyzed the outer and inner tastes. Believe it or not, this is actually set up for something that I do have a criticism of, a very legitimate criticism of, but yeah, I'll leave it for later. Okay, so the issue on the bus with the punk that has the boombox going is different in the book. They're equal. In the movie, it is a bit funnier because the whole he's just ignoring Kirk and Spock just reaches over and neck pinches and the guy goes and then falls down and turns the boombox off. It's nice because it is brief, it is effective, it is humorous. The book, however, is different in part because it's a different kind of medium. We can't just see the guy go. We can't see that, and we don't hear the sound stop, the noise stopping at that time. So instead they sit down and Kirk is like, would you turn that damn noise off? Want to try to make me? The young person leaned over the back of his seat toward Admiral Kirk. That could be arranged, the Admiral said. The young human punched him, but the Admiral blocked the blow. The young man's fist smacked against Kirk's palm. So Spock does the neck pinch to stop things from escalating, and does that and then he pushes the guy down to the corner of his seat, inspects the boombox, finds the button, turns it off, and that's when everybody applauds, and he's very uncomfortable about this because he doesn't want to draw attention to himself, but yeah. A lot of what follows is pretty much the same. Although we do get one explanation for the whole why Spock, why Spock refers to the authors that had every other word being profanity. Why Spock calls them the Giants. He recognized the names that Kirk had given off from a list he had scanned, the most successful authors of this time. So it's the Giants. Honestly, I'm not sure about that. Jacqueline Susan and Harold Robbins. I will acknowledge my knowledge. I will admit my knowledge of 20th century authors is not necessarily that great, but I think that's also kind of the point that I'm not particularly familiar with those names, but 2 other 20th century authors would be Tolkien, J.R. Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis, neither of whom would have written with profanity every other word. And I have a feeling that both those names will continue to be known into the next century as well. So it's Basically, my point is those two names given might not truly be the Giants. Anyway, they get to the Station Institute, join the tour. Kirk moves forward. He moved closer. Spock lagged at the back, but Jim supposed the Vulcan could not get himself into too much trouble. He had agreed for the moment to let Jim ask the questions. They both assumed Jim had a better chance of fitting in with this culture. Jim hoped they were both right. So, yeah. I mean, it does make sense. It's very reasonable. But it does, prove a problem, as we later find out. One thing that I did appreciate here, there is some more about, like, a little boy in the movie. It's like a teenager or something. But, waved his hand to attract her attention. Do whales really eat people like in Moby Dick? Many whales, baleen whales like George and Gracie, don't even have teeth, Gillian Taylor said. They strain plankton and shrimp out of vast amounts of seawater, and that's the limit of their hostility. Okay, so that basically we do get in the movie. But it continues. Moby Dick was a sperm whale. He did have teeth to hunt giant squid thousands of feet beneath the surface of the sea. But there are very few documented cases of attacks on people by whales. Unfortunately, their principal enemy is far more aggressive. So I do appreciate that it does include that, yes, some whales are indeed carnivores. In fact, orcas or killer whales, as I recall, because there's a mention... Yeah, whales have been hunted to the edge of extinction. This is her talking. The largest creature ever to inhabit the Earth, the blue whale, is virtually gone. Even if hunting stopped right now, today, we've got no assurance that the population would be able to recover. That's in part because orcas eat them. So I'm pretty sure it is killer whales. I know that okay, I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure there is basically, yes, blue whales have successfully been protected by and large. It might still be some illegal whalers out there that are doing, but by and large, they are not being touched by man. However, they do get there are predators in the sea for them. And as I recall, one of them is the killer whale. And they will gang up on a blue whale and bite at it. And the worst part is, when I remember learning this, yeah, I might be wrong in it being the killer whale. I'm not wrong on what the predator to the blue whale does to it. It basically takes out a huge chunk of its side and then leaves. So it's just fatally wounded. It's not necessarily dead yet, going to bleed out because it's got a huge chunk out of the side. But that's it. They don't even consume the whole thing. So it's really lousy because it's like nature itself is not even that efficient with killing and consuming a blue whale, but that's what's happening to it. So it is also just one of those things where it's like we may have brought them nearer to extinction, but it is also possible for many of these species in general to go extinct because that's what nature did. We set it up, but we didn't necessarily take the... Nature is kill stealing, I guess is a way to put it for some of this stuff. And also one thing I want to mention because it is neat. So the blue whale is a profoundly efficient animal. So I don't remember the name of it, but when I worked at a science center, they would run movies there, and one of them did talk about various animals and their adaptations, and the blue whale is profoundly efficient. Its body is very hydrodynamic, such that it doesn't need to expend much energy at all to travel great distances. But one thing that it will do, and it's kind of wild, and the video of it is... I guess you'd want to do a search for blue whale feeding. That should work, but... Because they are... they are technically carnivores, but it's like the algae, the shrimp, and such, like a baleen. I think a blue whale is a type of baleen whale. So it's not like going after... Well, it might be eating some small fish, but it's not like a killer whale that goes after larger things. But what it will do is it will open up its mouth, and its throat can expand to massive size, and it just takes a huge swallow of water to just capture as much as possible, and then eventually forces the water back out, filtering out all the stuff it does want to eat. And it is surreal to see, because as massive as a blue whale is, because they are massive, to suddenly just have it go whomp like that, so massively bulbous there, holding all this water. And it also stops the animal, because just absorbing all that water does cancel its momentum, so it'll just hang there and it has to, go through that. It's a hell of a thing. They are magnificent animals. We also get this. Aren't they beautiful, Jillian said, and they're extremely intelligent. Why shouldn't they be? They're swimming around with the largest brains on Earth. Do not confuse size with function, or volume with function. So I was curious and looked it up. Not necessarily that, well, they have a larger brain to body mass ratio than humans, but their brain organization is more streamlined and efficient for their specific needs. Just, ask an AI this kind of thing, because this kind of research I think AI is fine for. They have 3 to 4 main lobes. I'm trying to remember. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it 5? I don't remember, because it's like the I don't remember the name of them, but the old original brain, essentially the thing that is at the top of the brainstem that handles most instinctual stuff and things that are just for the body functioning. The 2 hemispheres, and then of course we have the prefrontal cortex, which is, and even in here it was mentioned, well, sort of. The prefrontal cortex is associated strongly with human memory, but also decision making. So it is one of those things that is actually very unique for us. Other species might have it, but it'll be very small. Ours is very, very developed. So that's kind of the seat for super intelligence. At least that's what some of the beliefs about it are. But for the blue whale, the humpback whale, at least, I asked the AI about the lobes of the brain of a whale brain, but then it'd say if there's a difference between the species, specifically humpbacks. It has a large olfactory lobe, so for processing smells. Relatively small neocortex, that's, for them, that's also what we have, but the prefrontal cortex is different, I believe. Involved in higher order thinking and sensory processing, a large auditory lobe for processing sounds, and large visual lobe. So yes, they may have a very large brain, but it's also, the parts of it are focused on specific things, and not only that, specific senses. So, yeah, okay, its vision is more developed than ours, so it has a larger brain to handle that. Its hearing is more developed than ours, so it has a larger brain for that. Its sense of smell is more developed than ours, so it has a larger brain for that. That in no way indicates that they are more intelligent than us. That it's just, for functional purposes, they have a larger brain. That's it. It would be, I'm trying to think, would that work? It would be like comparing a Mini Cooper to an Escalade. It's like, yeah, an Escalade is larger, but that's because it serves a specific function of carrying more people or cargo, if we would instead actually go to a truck rather than Escalade, or if we just have the Escalade hauling something, whatever. It's like, yeah, it's larger. That doesn't actually make it necessarily better. It's just, what is it used for? A Mini Cooper, if all you're doing is just driving yourself or a few people around, that's what it needs to be. It doesn't need to be more than that. So, yeah. It's not the size, it's how you use it. That is, in fact, a certain reality to it. And is also, I will add one other thing, because it's kind of funny that our vision, there's plenty of animals with better vision. Our hearing, plenty of animals with better hearing. Sense of smell, same thing. Even sense of taste, potentially, though I think that might be a little harder to figure out. In many ways, humans do not have properties that should make us the apex predator that we are, and yet we are, because of our intelligence, which isn't tied to any one sensory, any one sense, and so is able to, I guess, be applied to multiple. So you don't have the specializations that sees the brain growth that apparently the whales have gone through, but yeah, it still is. We are the more intelligent species. So now we get to this. So Spock is watching them. This is, they've seen them up top, now they've come down. He shortly will be going up to dive in all that. Spock wondered if it was proper Vulcan behavior to be amazed by 2 creatures playing. It should be, in my opinion, but he decided he did not care. Good for you. For the moment. about proper Vulcan behavior. He merely wanted to watch the whales. Nevertheless, the object of the Bounty's mission remained in his mind. Only now did he fully realize the magnitude of the task. If the two whales found themselves beamed into the storage tank without any knowledge or understanding of why they were being transported or where they were being taken, they might panic. Perhaps 23rd century materials could withstand the force of the powerful body of a terrified whale, but Spock had no doubt that the structural integrity of a tank jerry-rigged from contemporary materials would be severely compromised by such stress. So this, along with something else, helps explain why he does the mind meld. And I also just want to... Okay, I just wanted to check on my notes. So he actually wants to do the mind meld in part because he wants to communicate to them that, hey, this is what we want to do with you. Are you okay with that? Because if you're not, we'll come with something else. But also, if you're not comfortable when we do this, it could make so many things worse. So it's... And it is specifically Gracie, by the way, that he mind melds with. I didn't care much for how it was described because he was expecting it to be this intense and uncomfortable experience, but it was actually very smooth and easy. And it's like, why are you suggesting that it would be easier with a whale than with a human? A human with a humanoid brain should be far more familiar to him, who's also a humanoid, than to a whale, that it's a radically different species, that even if you allow intelligence there, doesn't mean that there's going to be much commonality. Kind of like how in Star Wars, I don't remember which of the books it was, may have been in Return of the Jedi, it was mentioned that Jedi mind tricks don't work on certain species just because their brain is so different from the humanoid brain that, it's like, I think that it was in there because, like Jabba pointing out to Luke, your humanoid brain can't do a Jedi mind trick on me because it's too different. Because I think it was there because I kind of remember the idea that if you had a Hutt that was a Jedi, they could potentially do a mind trick on Jabba then. It's like, that is an interesting concept. Or just another species that's similar enough. And it's like, I could see the mind meld being similar, where the brain is, in fact, these two brains are so different. Can we believe that a Vulcan could, in fact, mind meld? Or could it just be an imperfect mind meld, which should actually make it harder for Spock? But, it's just certain thoughts that are passed through, not necessarily words, not necessarily concepts, but something more abstract. So it's like they're not, which would be a problem, because how can you convey then that it's like, we intend to take you somewhere for this purpose? It's like that's a very complex thing. I mean, I guess a way to put that is consider an exception when they're talking about the plan, and it's like, the thought that they want to try to do the Inception with, that's like, no, it needs to be incredibly simple and ideally emotional so they connect that way. You don't want something at a higher level. It's like, would a high level of communication even be possible between Spock and the whale? We don't get that. Just this was actually a lot easier and smoother than I thought it would be. It's like, I don't know why, and I feel like that's just kind of a, whales are awesome, and I don't appreciate that. Okay, I just needed to check on this last highlight. It is after they've been kicked out. What possessed you to swim with damned whales? Jim exclaimed. Spock considered. It seemed the logical thing to do at the time. In front of 50 people? Where's your judgment, Spock? Spock hesitated. It is perhaps not at its peak at the moment. Not at its peak at the moment, Admiral. Sucrose has been known the hell to have this effect on Vulcans. I do not usually indulge. Indulge? Spock, do you mean to tell me you're drunk? In a manner of speaking, Admiral, he sounded embarrassed. Where did you get it? Why did you eat it? You gave it to me. I did not realize that the wafer's main constituent was sucrose until I had damned already ingested it. And you get the whole, those colorful idioms, stop using them. You don't have the hang of them. Okay, so the next chapter, that's near enough to where the chapter ends. And the next chapter, I see Jillian talking, so it looks like we'll be staying on that storyline for a while. But so I was just curious because, like, okay, sucrose, that's one of the sugars out there. Let me look this up. Oh, it says it's found in plants. Vulcans are vegetarian. Yeah, the main constituent of white sugar. Sucrose is extracted and refined from either sugar cane or sugar beet. Actually, I just quickly pulled it up, but it's pulled up a Wikipedia page on it, but I'm just sources. Particularly found in roots. Well, as far as many plants particularly found in their roots, fruits, and nectars. All fruits ripen. As fruits ripen, their sucrose content usually rises sharply, but some fruits contain almost no sucrose at all. Grapes, cherries, blueberries, blackberries, figs, pomegranates, tomatoes, avocados, lemons, and limes. Okay, so actually for grapes, as they ripen, sucrose changes into glucose and fructose, but it still is. It's a naturally occurring sugar in plant life. Vulcans get drunk on it, but Vulcans are vegetarians, so they eat. It is bad science fiction. I can't ignore that. But I guess it should have been something like the dye with the minthead dye on it or something. Let that be what intoxicated Spock instead of this thing that's actually in the stuff that I mostly eat. Just okay, fine. It might not be in all. It's certainly not going to be in all plants, so it's not going to be in all the stuff he eats. But it still is a significant problem that he is saying that it makes us drunk, but where do you find sucrose? Here, he'd be better off if he were a carnivore. I don't think meat tends to be a good source of sugars. So it's like, dude, Savik's got it right. Just, I will grant though, the idea of him somehow being intoxicated and that's why he would jump in instead of realizing, I shouldn't do that, or at least should ask about it or wait for another time. That. Okay, I'm good with that. I can understand all that. But, I can understand the motivation to have that in there, but you need a better example. Oh boy. Oh boy. Alright. That's all I got. So yeah, I did enjoy this chapter a bit better. It did seem a bit better written. The disagreements that I have are more on a technical basis, like outside technical, not internal technical. I mean, the whole where sucrose come from, that's kind of outside. That's also kind of inside because it is a problem. But the stuff with how, oh yes, they're so intelligent because their brains are so large. It's like, but their brains aren't actually used for intelligence. They're used for processing senses. So I mean, just yeah. There was also one thing that was. I'll mention, I didn't highlight it, but I do find it a little interesting. That's how they decided to write it in there. Kirk asks the question, how do you tell between male and female? And Jillian just blushes and says, what was it, observational? That's just, we looked at them. And it's like, okay, but is there anything, like, specific? So one thing that is mentioned there is that Gracie's actually a little larger than George. It could just be that, well, yes, the female tends to be the larger, so that's one clue. Is there any kind of other dimorphism that's going on there? So, for example, one of the dimorphisms for humans is men, we tend to be taller than women. We also tend to have broader shoulders and such. It's just bigger, heavier frame. So it's like that's one thing that you can use to tell. The size of the Adam's apple, the shape, the curve of the jaw, things like that. And other things that just from looking at somebody, not needing to look at any internal features such as the shape of the pelvis, which you likely need a X-ray for. I don't know if you can just look at somebody and figure that out, but in any case, and that's even just structural things. That's not even getting into certain sexual characteristics such as the development or lack thereof of breasts. So it's like, it's not an unreasonable question. Why she just kind of blushes and doesn't say something like any of that, I don't know. Because it does seem like, no, she should be able to give an answer. Maybe it is just Vonda didn't know, but decided to have the joke in there. Because you could completely remove it and wouldn't harm the story. Although maybe it is setting up a little bit, because in a way, it is another question that Kirk is asking that provides, hey, I am actually interested in these animals. Because it's not like he asked it insincerely. He asked it seriously. And it just, she's a little uncomfortable and has to give the answer that she does. So it's like, then later it might be, okay, you were actually asking good questions, like you care. So, yeah, I'm going to give you a chance. It might be set up for that, I'm not sure. But it still could be why not give a better answer? Or it could just be we don't know, that you really can't, short of some sort of blood test. Or just waiting until they, try to have sex. And then it's like, oh, now we can tell. I mean, you can also go with that. But so I'm also just remembering, like with cardinals, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's the males that are red. The females are actually brown in color, typically. I think peacocks. Yeah, peacocks also with the tails, the eyes and all that. That's the males, not the females. I mean, it's... You do find, though, there are plenty of examples of that dimorphism between the sexes in nature. So it's not an unreasonable question, and you think that it does exist. So why she just kind of blushes at it? It's like, we have to look at the genitals. It's like, maybe that is the answer, but it still seems like there might be another answer here that, yeah, should be, would have been fair to provide. So, anyway. Alright, now I will actually try to stop. So see you next time for Chapter 8.